Good morning, everybody. My name is Jonathan Allen. I'm the Chargé d'Affaires of the United Kingdom here at the UK mission to the United Nations in New York. And I am delighted to be opening this Security Council Arria format meeting this morning, which focuses on supporting women's participation in the Afghan peace process. And I'm co-hosting this morning's Arria with the permanent representatives of Afghanistan, of Germany, and of Indonesia. Now, the United Kingdom and Afghanistan launched the Group of Friends of Women in Afghanistan last autumn. And our aim then was to highlight the achievements and advances made by Afghan women in recent decades, but also to emphasize our support for Afghan women and their rights as the prospect of a negotiated peace approaches. For our part, the United Kingdom believes that a long-term sustainable peace that Afghans deserve will only be possible if peace negotiations involve Afghan women of all backgrounds, from Kabul to the provinces, at every stage and at every level of the process. And it is the only way to ensure that we protect and promote the rights and achievements that Afghan women have fought for. Today, we're still awaiting the start of intra-Afghan negotiations, but we are perhaps closer than ever before. So it's a timely opportunity to bring together this fantastic panel of women leaders, Afghans themselves and friends of Afghanistan, and I look forward enormously to the discussion. And with that, I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Ambassador Jani of Indonesia.
Thanks so much, Jonathan. A very good morning, Your Excellency, the First Lady of Afghanistan, Madam Rula Ghani. Dear colleagues, it's an honor to be here today, co-hosting with our colleagues from the UK, Germany, and of course, Afghanistan. This Arria-Formula meeting, as Jonathan mentioned, is quite important with the plan of holding the intra-Afghan negotiations soon. This meeting is not only an opportune moment to provide momentum, but also valuable as the discussion in this meeting will resonate the crucial role of Afghan-led and Afghan-owned peace process with the participation of women. Just would like to underline three important points. First, the crucial role of women in the peace process and national building. The start of the peace process, we believe, will bring a new beginning and hope for the people of Afghanistan, including women and youth. A beginning to start rebuilding their nation towards a prosperous, democratic, stable, and secure Afghanistan. As they embark on this very important new journey, it is the expectation of many that the drivers of the process would involve women in every stage of the process. As in many societies and as history has taught us, women have led the way and continue to shape in bringing peace and prosperity. They are also an integral part of the engine of growth and an agent of peace in national reconciliation. Thus, it's important to tap their full potential. The second point is the need of creating a conducive environment to ensure the role of women in the process. It should be noted that women have the same rights and they should be given rooms to share their experience in promoting peace in Afghanistan. The right to be involved in charting the course for a better Afghanistan, the right to be able to contribute to a better future for their children and future generation. Women should be involved in the negotiation of the intra-Afghan peace negotiation to ensure a sustainable outcome. Their role should not be compromised or derogated to be merely an object of negotiation, but should be the subject and decision makers of future peace. And I know we in the Council has a landmark resolution 1325 on women, peace and security, and I certainly welcome the government of Afghanistan, which is currently under the second phase of the Afghan National Plan to implement resolution 1325. Girls continue to be in schooling. A significant numbers of parliamentary seats are held by women, as well as women in executive level, including in civil servant and various sectors. And in our midst, we have our own sister, Ambassador Adela, as permanent representative to the United Nations. We are proud to have her here. The third last point is the importance of nurturing all available potential. The gains that have been achieved this last decade should continue to be nurtured and enhanced further. And this is where the international community, including the Security Council, could play a part. And that is to ensure the momentum is preserved, that there are support and concrete assistance, political support, as well as economic assistance, and most importantly, to ensure that there will not be a reversal of progress that would imperil the basic human rights of women and children in Afghanistan. Without any fear, Afghan women should continue to pursue their education, their dreams, and their choice. They must be fully supported and respected in their participation and contribution, and they should be part of the decision-making process and have an active role in reconciliation and post-conflict reconstruction. Sustainable peace will be elusive without the participation of Afghan women. Finally, allow me to reiterate Indonesia's once again strong commitment to enhancing the role of women for a lasting peace in Afghanistan. We have emphasized in this council and other forums many times, their inputs and meaningful participation is indispensable for the whole peace process and nation building. For Indonesia, its commitment to support the full and meaningful participation of women in the peace process, including in the upcoming intra-Afghan negotiation, is unwavering. Foreign Minister Retno Marsudi is personally reinforcing this support. Thus, Indonesia will continuously collaborate with the government of Afghanistan for capacity building of Afghan women. On my note here, we have 60 needs-driven capacity building programs, including for Afghan women. And early March of this year, Foreign Minister Marsudi visited Kabul and launched the Afghanistan-Indonesia Women Solidarity Network. This network is intended to bridge the gap on well-being, empowerment, and protection of women as agents of peace. We hope that a concrete plan of action will be developed to that end, and this network with full participation of Afghan interlocutors can turn the vision into reality. The women of Afghanistan are not alone in their pursuit of a secure, stable, and prosperous country. All of us, we are with them all the way. Indonesia stands ready to further support the intra-Afghan negotiation, including with facilitation of the process. Thank you very much, dear colleagues.
Thank you very much, Gianni, and over to Christoph Heusken, the PR of Germany.
Yes, thank you very much. Very happy. Germany is very proud to co-sponsor today's Arria meeting on the role of women in the Afghan peace process. For Germany, the Women, Peace and Security agenda is on the top of our list of priorities for our 2 years as members of the Security Council. Just 10 days ago, we had a signature event during this year's July presidency of Germany Security Council on concentrating on sexual violence in conflict. And we deeply believe that it's crucial that women play a more important role in politics, in preventing and managing conflicts. And when you look at the crisis that all of our countries are confronting these days, and this is the COVID-19 crisis, if you look at countries that have managed well the crisis, countries like my own country, Germany, like Iceland or Finland or New Zealand, all of these countries are run by women, where we have women prime ministers. Also in Afghanistan, we have made a tremendous process. The First Lady is present here, but the First Lady is very active in Afghanistan, and we are very grateful for your job, and we are very grateful that you and your government, whoever was responsible, to send Adila Ras to New York, a woman leader ambassador here in New York. But of course, we have, when we turn to Afghanistan, we have to have women play a more important role overall. They have to have a seat at the table, at the negotiating table with the Taliban, but in general in the polls and in transforming society overall. The fact that today we have an all-women panel from the UN, from government, international partners, and society is actually speaks for itself and sends a very strong signal. So we are very happy to see many improvements in Afghanistan. Women's rights have been promoted over the years, thanks to the reforms that have been implemented by the Afghan government. We have a very vibrant women's rights movement, but we have to admit it that it's largely limited to urban settings. There is still a long way ahead to achieve full, equal and meaningful participation of women in daily life in the whole country. They continue facing significant challenges when it comes to education, when it comes to economic opportunities, healthcare, just to say a few areas. And there is, when you talk to Afghan women, an unprecedented fear of going back to a time when especially women and minorities were denied their freedoms. So our solid ambition is that any outcome of peace talks and intra-Afghan negotiations should build upon the achievements of the last 18 years, most notably on reforms of norms of freedom, non-discrimination, human rights value, education. And in this respect, what is in this respect enshrined in the Constitution must not be changed. So we believe, as I said earlier, that we can only achieve general sustainable peace in negotiated, inclusive political settlement owned and led by the people of Afghanistan, including its women. Women must be equally and meaningfully represented within the negotiation team, and we will hear more about that from Dr. Sarabi. So we have highly appreciated the steps so far taken to move the process forward. Direct talks, we have had some substantial progress regarding the exchange of prisoners. But now we urge all parties to take the final step to start intra-Afghan negotiations. Such a very long, arduous process needs united international support, and Germany will continue to support the Afghans in this endeavor, and we are very happy to work with partners, including our co-pen holder Indonesia, Jani, and in particular then also with the US, with Norway, with Uzbekistan, and also in particular with Qatar, with whom we already, and I'm very happy to see the ambassador here, they're already in Doha, Germany, helped to get some Afghan women around the table in some informal talks. The United Nations will need to continue playing a role in this process, and this is why I'm also very happy that the SRSG Lines will also brief us a bit later today. So thank you very much for having us here.
Thank you very much, Christoph. And now it gives me great pleasure to pass the floor over to my colleague Adela, the PR of Afghanistan. And I think you're going to make some introductory remarks in your national capacity, but then Adela, you're going to take over then the hosting of the event and pass to the First Lady, who it's wonderful to see on our screen, and then I go over to Jani to introduce the panel. So I'm going to pass over to you for a bit, Adela. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonathan, Excellencies and distinguished guests. I also would like to join my co-chairs in extending a very warm welcome to all participants who are joining us at this virtual area meeting of the Security Council on Women in the Afghan Peace Process. The timeline of this meeting cannot be stressed enough as we prepare for the start of the intra-Afghan negotiations. I would like to thank the President of the Security Council for this month, Germany, for allowing us to convene this meeting, to the UK, our co-chair of the Group of Friends of Women in Afghanistan, and to Indonesia for supporting and co-coordinating today's discussion. My sincere gratitude to Her Excellency the First Lady as the keynote speaker for her valuable contribution, and to our distinguished panelists for being with us today. The First Lady's efforts to further women's empowerment as an important pillar within the government have been an integral part of Afghanistan's progress to advance gender equality over the past few years. Her work in bringing the peace process to the ground has been critical, and her leadership in starting the difficult but utmost important dialogue to include the voices of women from all corners of the country, particularly through the National Women's Consensus for Peace, underlines the government's unwavering commitment to a peace that belongs to all of us. Today's discussion and the role of Afghan women in securing a lasting peace in our country is an issue of vital importance, not only for women, but for all Afghans. There has been genuine and tangible progress made over the past 19 years for women who have risen to become visible and influential members in all segments of the society. These gains are built on the foundation set by the Islamic Republic according to the Afghan constitution, which is based on equality and respect. It is clear that when the intra-Afghan negotiations began, we will be facing Taliban that do not see the value in women as we do. But I echo the voice of my fellow Afghan sisters when I say that our voices will be heard and that we will not compromise away our hard-won gains in the protection of the rights. Speaking about peace in Afghanistan also means underscoring the achievement of multilateralism in the work of the international community, of rising to the occasion in the name of human rights, peace, and equality. Reaching a sustainable and dignified peace will lead our joint journey towards a self-reliant and a prosperous nation. This is the desire and the commitment of every Afghan under the leadership of His Excellency President Ghani. We know there is still a difficult road before us, but we are optimistic with the leadership of our government, with the resilience of our people, and with the support of our regional and international partners. We will see the peace and prosperity that Afghan people so desperately deserve. Now it is my great honor to give the floor to the driving force in our work to empower, promote, and safeguard Afghan women, Her Excellency, the First Lady of Afghanistan. Her work in supporting women and their meaningful inclusion in the society and government extends to all and every part of the country, and she has given a stronger voice to women in Afghanistan. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Adela. In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, eminent members of the Security Council, distinguished participants in this Arria meeting, dear Afghan sisters, I come to you in peace. Assalamu alaikum. I would like to thank all of you for the keen interest you have in the active participation of Afghan women in bringing peace back to Afghanistan. Allow me first to set the context from an Afghan point of view. And let me give you a heads up. I am known not to beat around the bush. So maybe some of my comments will be very direct, but I like to say the truth, and I think truth will always prevail. Long before the launch of the Doha talks in March 2019, peace had been uppermost on Afghan's mind. Ever since the ousting of the Taliban in December 2001, and we will always be grateful for the generosity of those members of the international community who did not hesitate to cross oceans and travel thousands of miles to help us bring their rule to an end. Ever since that time, Afghan men and women have been yearning for peace. Who wouldn't? Can you imagine living in constant fear that you'll be caught in the next terror attack? That the children you have sent to school in the morning might not make it back home by evening? Or that the car you are driving might hit an IED and blow out from under you? Afghan women did their share of calling out for peace and for putting an end to the daily violence. At first, it was repeated calls on the government to ensure the security of everyday life. Then they started focusing on how they could themselves contribute to social peace within their own social environment. In other words, how to unlearn the violent reflexes of the preceding decades of war and relearn how to live together in peace and harmony. All over Afghanistan, many women, civil society activists, organized trainings for and discussions on peace, often with the support of the donor community. In May 2017, my own office hosted a 3-day symposium on the role of women as messengers of peace and offered a full-day workshop on mediation and conflict resolution to the 350 participants. When President Ghani made his courageous peace offering in February 2018, announcing that his government was ready to sit down with the Taliban without any preconditions, every Afghan celebrated the news, and Afghan women in particular started discussing what peace should look like. Encouraged by a renewed campaign, both local and international, calling for a place for women at the negotiating table, a group of determined activists of various denominations came together and decided to visit each of our 34 provinces to seek the opinions and voices of provincial women. The discussion they had shed light on what peace meant for women around Afghanistan, what were the obstacles to peace in their localities, and what solutions could be sought. The result of these provincial consultations was the Afghan Women's National Consensus for Peace, held on February 28, 2018, in the Loijaga tent, in the presence of 3,500 women from all 34 provinces, and the validation of a 15-article national declaration that summed up the concerns of the 15,000 women who had been consulted. 2 months later, at the Afghan National Loijaga for Peace of April 29, 2019, 30% of the selected participants were women, of whom 2 were deputy to the chair, 2 were secretary to the chair, and 1 was the official spokesperson. Likewise, of the 51 working groups to which the JIGA participants were assigned, 13 were led by a woman, and 21 had a woman as the rapporteur. I shared this context with you to show that though their efforts have not been consistently covered by the international media, Afghan women have indeed been and still are very much involved at several levels of the Afghan peace process. They are involved at the level of advocacy, both national and international, at the level of training for mediation and conflict resolution, at the level of consulting and networking for a unified version of peace, and at the level of taking part in national jirgas on peace. Today, they are members of the official negotiating team. Eventually, they will also have a significant part to play in the post-negotiation phase with the reintegration of the returnees. Afghan women have found their voice, and they are not afraid to raise it. They found fault, for example, with the initial Doha setup, as it did not make any allowance for women's participation. They issued declarations, wrote up op-eds in the international press, held debates on TV, and even attempted, at least a group of 40 of them, to travel to Doha to speak directly to the Taliban residing there, but unfortunately were not granted visas. At this point, I want to express the pleasure I have to see that the permanent representative of Qatar to the UN is taking part in the panel discussion. I take it as a welcome acknowledgement on the part of the Emirate of Qatar of the importance of Afghan women's role in the peace process. Finally, through Afghan women's contacts with sister organizations in the US, Afghan women successfully lobbied Congress, and in a closed congressional hearing, it was made clear to the relevant parties that Afghan women must be included in the Doha talks. Afghan women should be congratulated for their persistence, their tenacity, and their courage. True, the present government, by giving them easier access to health, education, and legal services, and by fostering freedom of speech, has opened for them groundbreaking opportunities and has encouraged them to live up to their potential. But we should recognize that they function in an environment where obstacles still remain and male-centered mentalities often work against their progress. This is why I would like to address now Afghan women's apprehensions regarding the peace process. Do not forget that the Taliban ruled Afghanistan from 1996 to 2001. 5 years that Afghan women cannot dismiss from their memory. Many Afghan women still bear the scars, emotional and physical, of those 5 years. They suffered indiscriminate discipline and abuse at the slightest infraction. Many lost husbands, sons, and fathers who were killed or disappeared. Some were stoned to death in public places. Danger lurked all around. People stayed home, venturing out only on urgent errands. Food was scarce, and everybody lived in fear. At the end of those 5 years, Kabul was a ghost city with no electricity, bare shelves in the shops, and ankle-deep mud in the streets. Remember, as I mentioned earlier, after the tragedy of September 11, 2001, you, our international partners, crossed oceans, traveled thousands of miles, and sacrificed tremendously to help relieve not only Afghans, but the world from the Taliban's reign of terror. 20 years later, Taliban terror has only become more lethal. Yet, you seem to insist that peace will only happen once we bring their rule back. We cannot be convinced that peace in Afghanistan can be achieved by reimposing Taliban rule. It will mean relinquishing all of our hard-earned achievements. Afghan women who have the most to fear read a darker subliminal message that for peace to come, Afghan women would have to pay the cost. We beg to differ. Yes, we burn for peace. Yes, we dream of living a normal life in a stable and secure environment. Yes, we welcome the Taliban as our Afghan brothers and sisters. We certainly did so during the 2 short ceasefires in 2018 and 2020. They are Afghans, and as such, they have a right to live in Afghanistan. As a matter of fact, being Afghans, most of them already do, and those living in neighboring countries come and go at will. But the Taliban need to understand that Afghanistan of today is no longer the political desert of 1995. The reality is that even in areas contested by Taliban today, a recent independent survey shows that 80% of residents would prefer to live under the Islamic Republic than under an Islamic Emirate. For the past 2 decades, Afghans have embraced and been active participants in strengthening the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan. We have a constitution that sets the rules for political, social, economic, religious, and legal interaction. And we consider ourselves, men and women, citizens with rights and obligations. Whoever elects to reside in Afghanistan has to abide by those rules. Distinguished audience, this is, to the best of my knowledge, the general context of the peace process from an Afghan point of view. Of course, other actors involved in that process may have different concerns and goals, even different deadlines. On behalf of all my Afghan sisters, I would like to state that Afghan women will not willingly sacrifice at the altar of any other actor's political expediency. We will keep moving forward with our work for peace, and we have for you, as we have for years, knowing that the peace we need and we seek to create will be one that is sustainable and beneficial to all Afghans. ومن الله التوفيق.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Ambassador Johnny, I guess it's your turn, but just wanted to let you know.
Thank you very much, Adela, and for giving me the floor now. And thank you so much, Excellency First Lady, for a very inspiring keynote address. Now, before giving the floor to our panelists, our sincere regret that the co-sponsor of today does not have a woman in our midst today, after Karen of UK left us. But rest assured that we have 5 distinguished women speakers. Let me introduce the 5 prominent figures briefly who will give their perspective. They have rich experiences on the ground. Their views are important in translating our common desire to instill better rights protection for women and girls in Afghanistan. We have the first speaker, which is Dr. Hasina Safi, the Minister of Women's Affairs of Afghanistan. Ms. Safi has been the Minister of Women's Affairs since June 2020. She has over 20 years of experience in women's empowerment, peace building, and capacity building. She has also represented Afghan women in the direct unofficial peace talk in Oslo and Doha. The second speaker will be Dr. Habiba Sarabi, a doctor hematologist, politician, and reformer. Previously, former Minister of Women's Affairs and Culture and Education. She is a member of the government's negotiating team for peace negotiation. Dr. Sarabi currently serves as Deputy Chairperson of Afghanistan High Peace Council. And the third speaker, we have Ms. Ghezal Haris. She is Inspector General of the Government of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, experienced in the legal sector and an advocate for human rights and a constitutional law expert. Ms. Harris is also a member of the government's negotiating team. The fourth speaker will be Ms. Deborah Lyons, SRSG for UNAMA. I think colleagues has known her very well. And the last speaker will be my dear sister, Ambassador Sheikh Alia Ahmed bin Saif Al Thani, the permanent representative of Qatar and one of the group of Friends of Women in Afghanistan. Now, as the First Lady underlined, Afghan women's voice should be heard. I would like to invite Dr. Hasina Safi to give her remarks. Over to you, Dr. Hasina Safi.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Let me first thank Security Council Arria-Formula for this opportunity and all the organizers, such as our friend UK, Germany, and Indonesia, definitely our very strong representative Fadel Ras from Afghanistan. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I think this is a great example of the platform of Security Council for providing the opportunity to hear women's voices, and we are very sure that throughout the process, our messages would be reflected. I would like to start and follow up on what Ms. Ras and Her Excellency, the First Lady, said, and I want to be brief. The brief statement is Afghan women can lead their issues themselves. I'm very proud to not only say that this as words, but you see a clear example of that, which is myself, Dr. Sarabi, and also Ghezal, and like us, many others. Starting at the age of 15-year-old as a librarian, today I'm leading a ministry. So this does not need any success story, any example. Like me, you will be able to find many strong ladies who can represent their voices themselves. So I would like to thank you very much for the opportunity and try to be as brief as I can, but use as practical words as I can in order to make it easy for you to help us in the future process. We started from awareness, we went to participation, we engaged in meaningful participation, and today we are demanding leadership. There is no doubt, as you can see many examples, not only on the table in Afghanistan, but also around you. Without any doubt, it starts from the Security Council resolution, small project, short-term projects, which were 3 months to 6 months, till the second phase of 1325 report, which our friend indicated earlier as one of the specific indicators of the government of Afghanistan. Afghan women started their work from villages to districts to provinces, and today in the capital, they are trying to get organized again and to see how they can bring in the numbers to practice. We started advocacy based on our constitution, and we are very thankful to all the international partners who supported us along with our advocacy. Today, we are trying to change the number to quality. Today, we are trying to really define and analyze our situations ourselves, no matter if it is our bedroom, if it is our yard, if it is our district, our province, or the capital of our country, Kabul. We are trying to analyze various aspects of our involvement, starting from social peace to political peace. As Her Excellency, the First Lady, gave various examples of symposiums, the jirgas. That is how we started. In order to really give the peace process a real picture, we defined the themes to ourselves. And that was the real indicator of success to a successful peace process is investing on women. How do we invest on women is with the social tools. What are the social tools? Talking, making ourselves discuss what our day-to-day experiences. A great example of that can be cultural initiatives like photography, like painting, like discussing, like cinemas, like theaters, etc., etc. I would like to present here as well about what our government did in order to organize with what the women had been advocating. Since the last 5 years, we are very proud to say that we have a listener government, especially His Excellency the President. Without any doubt, we have a very strong backup of Her Excellency the First Lady. That is why the result which we were expecting to come in 10 years, we have it in 5 years. And in the coming 5 years, we are also hoping to have the result of the coming 10 years in 5 years. And we would like you to stand with us along. One of the biggest things which we discovered as something which we had been advocating and which we really needed to bring in practice is the recent initiative which His Excellency the President approved as a decree in the cabinet is the Deputy Governor's position. Without any doubt, this is one of the greatest success indicators. How do I define that? I define it, if a woman is the Deputy Governor, it is itself a success indicator in the local governance. And I'm very happy to hear that from our colleague in Germany, who said it's not only urban. we are moving towards districts. We are moving towards villages and provinces. And I think this position is the first concrete and tangible indicator. Since this is a women issue, the second indicator is that women ministry is one of the observers of the process in order to give opportunity to the talented of talents in the provinces in capital. Throughout the process, Ministry of Women Affairs will be an observer observing the process of announcing till recruitment, till hiring of their positions. And we are targeting it to happen at least 50% to 70% of this till Geneva conference. That will be one of the other indicators. As you know, we have many things for the first time in the government of Afghanistan. For the first time, we have a woman nominated as a member of security, as a member of High Council of Judiciary System. That is not only in Afghanistan, but it's in the whole region. That for the first time, we have a woman as a member of Supreme Court, a High Council of Supreme Court. For the first time, we have a woman in defense as a deputy minister. For the first time, we have a woman in interior. For the first time, we had a woman as a minister of information and culture. For the first time, we have a woman as an education minister. There are many, many examples which if I list, it will take all your time. But I would like to end up with some points. We are very much moving along with the support of international community. Three things which I think is should be well noted by the international community. The first thing is back our government, back them up, because they are listening to us. I'm not saying we have no challenges, as Her Excellency, the First Lady was saying, but we always have challenges because we are proved as qualified members of the society. So there is a feeling of insecurity now. The second thing is believe in the women capacity, not only in capitals, but only in the provinces. That is what presently our government is doing. The third thing is that we are thinking that the women of Afghanistan are not the only women preachers in the globe. In the United States, in Europe, in Asia, all around the world, the women are facing problems. If it is less pay, if it is domestic violence, if it is other else things. But they are moving along. We are ready to move forward and we are ready with the challenges. What I would like to say is we are moving along with the international community. In my specific statement to the Security Council, because 1325 is one of the resolutions of Security Council, is to back us up with supporting Security Council in the second phase for the local governance. I would like to thank you very much. I'm ready for any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hasina. May I now kindly invite the next speaker on my list, which is Dr. Habiba Sarabi. You have the floor, Dr. Habiba.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, First Lady, the co-chair, and distinguished participants, Assalamu alaikum. I'm honored today to join such a notable panel and to have once again the opportunity of addressing the Security Council. The issue of the participation of women and the promotion of their rights during the negotiation between the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan and the Taliban is one of the vital importance and forums like this can give us the opportunity to reflect on what has been done and underscore what remains to be done towards achieving a gender-sensitive, sustainable peace in Afghanistan. The past 19 years have seen a long process in the movement toward enhancing the rights of Afghan women. In 2003, women stood firmly during the Lower Jirga that drafted the constitution of our new Afghanistan. The new foundational document established the equality of rights between men and women and created a prosperous environment for the emergence of women as leaders of our society, key decision makers in government, and leaders of the civil society. Today, we continue to stand committed to these principles with the vision of a country that respects and promotes the rights of all its citizens. I have 4 points to make in today's meeting. First, the Afghan women have been the main victim of the last 2 decades of war. However, after the fall of the Taliban regime, a vibrant society came into being, and women and the new generation were an integral part of such a change. As the change has already occurred in Afghanistan, the present generation of women has different demands. For instance, once women like my mother only wished for her daughter to get educated. But today, my hopes for my daughter go for beyond just education. I want her to enjoy her full rights under our constitution. We should keep these differences in mind and move forward. Second, I just want to raise is about the level of violence in Afghanistan. Violence has taken heavily dead toll on the civilian alongside the COVID-19, the widespread violence and virus pandemic necessitated to start intra-Afghan negotiation as soon as possible. To launch the negotiation, the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan has designated 21 individuals, including 4 women, as its negotiating team to represent the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan. The 4 female members of the team work in 4 different committees in order to have voice on different issues concerning the intra-Afghan negotiation. I, as a chair for the Outreach Committee of Vulnerable Group, Human Rights and Women's and Civil Society, have had more than 40 consultative meetings with the representative of the different segments of society to hear from them what they want out of the intra-Afghan dialogue. We heard their demands for the preservation of our republic and protection of their civil rights and freedom according to the Constitution. Therefore, we want sovereign, democratic, and united Afghanistan to be in peace with itself and world, and where the achievement of the past 19 years, especially women's rights, are protected. We ask the international community to continue to proactively engage with us in achieving the goal and to continue to strengthen our gain of the last 19 years to have a prosperous and peaceful Afghanistan. I would like to urge the international community not to forget Afghanistan given the current economic problem due to COVID-19 pandemic, as peace in Afghanistan is vital for peace and stability in the region and world at large. Third, the third point is too often it's assumed that the demands for women's rights are coming only from women who reside in urban center. But the truth is that women in the rural society want the same rights. The only reason that they are often prevented from raising their voice is intimidation by extremist groups fighting the Afghan government. The Taliban in their statement have called for the return of their so-called Islamic Emirate. But they must understand that the Afghanistan they will be negotiating with is a combination of the older generation that lived and rejected their regime and the younger generation that grew in an environment of freedom, equality, and globalization. We are determined to take a step forward in the development of our country and not to go back to the ideologies of the past. We welcome the Taliban as a member of our society, but reiterate to them that they will be joining our system and not the other way around. Lastly, I would like to say that the negotiation team is ready to engage with the Taliban and take the necessary step toward a peace that effectively safeguard and protect the rights of women. We call on Taliban to show their commitment to peace, put down their arms, and talk to us at the negotiation table instead of entangling into violence. The people of Afghanistan are optimistic, and they are watching us closely. That how can we help and bring lasting peace? But we are ready to negotiate for a long, lasting, and sustainable peace that ensure women's rights and enable women to prosper as an equal citizen of the society. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Habiba Sarabi. Now I would like to invite Ms. Ghezal Harris to have the floor. You have the floor, Madam.
In the name of God, Her Excellency the First Lady of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, permanent members of the Security Council, and distinguished audience. I'm very pleased to be addressing the Security Council once again, although only virtually, and to discuss our views and concerns in view of the peace negotiations. I would like to first thank Permanent Mission of Afghanistan to the United Nations, particularly Ambassador Ross, and permanent missions of the United Kingdom, Germany, Indonesia, and Qatar for organizing this timely discussion on women and the Afghan peace process. Today, I would like to briefly speak on the Afghan Constitution and how it may be affected in the peace process, and how that may affect the life of Afghan women. The enactment of the Constitution of 2004 marked a significant break from Afghanistan's decades of war and lawlessness. Despite the years of conflict following the adoption of the Constitution, Afghanistan has made notable progress with regards to rule of law, democratic governance, human rights, and particularly women's rights. Afghanistan's Constitution of 2004 is the greatest constitution Afghans have ever experienced. This constitution introduces an Islamic republic. It was approved following an inclusive process of constitution making and comprehensive public consultation. It outlines a comprehensive set of rights and liberties, which has been unprecedented in Afghanistan. It introduces democratic and representative institutions and guarantees citizens' right to vote. It guarantees equality before the law and recognizes men and women and Muslims and non-Muslims equal citizens. It gives equal value to Shias and Sunnis as the two major sects within Islam in the country. It introduces a meaningful separation of powers and a wide range of checks and balances, again, quite unprecedented in Afghanistan. The Constitution emphasizes on rule of law and on constitutionalism, and it upholds freedom of expression in media. These were just a few that I could explain to you. What I mentioned above confirms that inclusivity and pluralism are the foundations of our constitution. This constitution reconciles Islam, democratic values and principles, human rights, and the Afghan culture in the best way possible, in a way that Afghanistan and quite a number of Islamic countries have not experienced. Despite the fact that this is the best constitutions Afghans have ever experienced, the current constitution is not perfect, nor any constitution anywhere around the world has ever proved to be perfect, especially if it is a constitution that is implemented. Constitutions improve over time through amendments and interpretation, two factors that keep the constitution a living document and relevant to the time and needs of the society it regulates. So far in the peace process, our constitutional gains have been placed in serious jeopardy by repeated suggestions that the constitution be changed to accommodate the demands of the Taliban. This raises serious concerns over preserving democratic governance, protection of human rights, and separation of powers enshrined in the Constitution. We recognize that the Constitution is as much a political document as it is a legal one. Therefore, political consensus through a Constitution can guarantee a stable political order, and in our case, a stable post-peace political order. Constitutional amendments as a part of the peace process is inevitable. But the main question is, what will we like to amend and how? Afghanistan's constitution allows amendments with specific conditions. First, provisions related to Islamic republicanism and Islam cannot be amended. Second, provisions related to fundamental rights can be amended only if the objective is to improve them. And third, any other aspects of the Constitution can be amended with due respect to new experiences and requirements of the time. We recognize the fact that the Constitution must be flexible to be amended to become a more effective document for the current time and in order to ensure a stable political order. But we emphasize on preserving the values and the principles that we have fought for since 2001. We could be flexible in some fronts, including institutional structures and systems of governance, but we cannot compromise on our values and principles, being a republic state, representative institutions, and people's right to exercise sovereignty and decide about their future. With a group that has proved since the mid-90s that they do not believe in these principles. The concerns that I and many other fellow Afghans have do not only stem from our experiences under the Taliban, but the constitution of Taliban that was drafted before their fall, revised and approved in a Taliban assembly of more than 500 members in 2005. This constitution has no mention of the word women, does not recognize representative institutions, and disregards followers of other sects and religious minorities. In very simple terms, our current constitution gives all its citizens the freedom in this space to raise their voices and allows us to decide for the future of our country. It recognizes manifestation of sovereignty by people. But the Taliban's constitution is an authoritarian document. It does not recognize the people to be the sovereign. It rather suppresses the voices and dictates the citizens. It particularly suppresses women and religious minorities. Plus, we repeatedly hear the term Islamic emirate and Islamic regime, which are extremely vague. We have very few models of emirates around the world, and Taliban's version does not appear to be anything close to that. And worse, if we leave things to Taliban's interpretation of an Islamic regime, it has been unique and extremely harsh. Same applies to women and minority rights. And again, there are concerns over Taliban's interpretation of protection of their rights under Islam. Any compromise to citizens' rights and liberties would erase the hard-won gains of the nearly 2 decades in Afghanistan. Peace in Afghanistan is a desire of every Afghan, but it has to be guaranteed to be an inclusive process, not a process that seems to be inclusive of the insurgents, a minority, but the one which may result in exclusion of the majority of Afghans, of women, and of religious minorities. I would like to thank the Security Council for their continuous support to the people of Afghanistan and would like to urge that they stand next to us and support us for continuing to preserve the games and further promote them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Now I was informed by the organizer to remind next speakers and others to on the time because we're already past the time. Now I would like to invite the special representative of the Secretary General for Afghanistan, Ms. Deborah Lyons. Deborah, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ambassador. Wonderful to see you again. And it's particularly wonderful to join my Afghan sisters here tonight in Afghanistan, this morning in New York with all of you, and also to be on a panel with the ambassador from Qatar, certainly a country that has been very supportive and very critical in the peace negotiations. Your Excellency, First Lady, Baroness Hodgson, and my fellow panelists, members of the Security Council, truly, I want to start off by thanking Afghanistan and the United Kingdom as the co-chairs of the Group of Friends of Women in Afghanistan, very important group, particularly important in this year and the coming year. As well, of course, as Germany and Indonesia, the very important pen holders for convening this meeting. Allow me to make our position clear at the outset. The Afghan peace process must represent the whole population, not part of it, not only half of it, but all of it. This must be a core priority for Afghanistan, for the international community, and for the UN. Studies have shown that how a society treats women is a significant predictor of its stability and prosperity. In an incredible research done by Valerie Hudson and other researchers, in 2016, 170 countries were surveyed, and the level of stability of those countries was not determined by its ethno-cultural profile, nor by its level of democracy, not even the robustness of its economy. The single greatest predictor of the stability of any of these countries in the 170 country survey was how those countries treated and engaged women in their society. The research has been done. The evidence is there. Women must be part of any peace process representing their country. If they are, the peace agreement is far more durable, far more long-lasting, and spreads to more of the community. So it is in everyone's interest to ensure that women's full participation in this important process happens, not only for its own sake, but to ensure that its results are a more stable and prosperous Afghanistan. But I must say that since I started in this job, I've been heartened by the overwhelming support for women's participation and empowerment and for a peace that preserves the rights of all Afghans. I have heard this from Afghans. I have heard this from the neighboring countries. I have heard this from the wider international community. And for all of us, it is unthinkable that women would not be there when the future of Afghanistan is discussed and decided. Already, there have been encouraging signs of women's participation, as you've already heard from my fellow panelists and from the First Lady. Women advocates have been working hard to get their message out here in Afghanistan, and efforts are underway for women to contribute as experts, advisors, and champions throughout the process. From discussions on the form and agenda of negotiations through to the negotiations themselves, and most particularly in the actual implementation of any agreement. Women can and should be present in as many roles as men, but not just because they are women, but because they are politicians, advocates, human rights leaders, peace builders, business owners, and community leaders. And all of these skills and perspectives are needed. UNAMA has urged both parties to the peace talks to ensure women's meaningful participation in the process, and I thank the member states for amplifying this message. I am encouraged how often the Islamic Republic negotiation team and the State Ministry for Peace have in fact reached out to women, youth, civil society, and religious scholars. Indeed, I have just come from a session this afternoon with the State Ministry of Peace, where they were talking about the work that they're doing on the local level in the provinces to bring together women in self-mobilizing groups to contribute to the peace talks. And I look forward to working with them in that. I urge Afghan political leaders, most particularly the Taliban leadership and everyone involved, to listen to the points of view in these discussions. Equally, we would like to see more women in both negotiation teams. I commend the extraordinary dedication that the women in the Islamic Republic team, represented here with us today, the incredible contribution that they have made in preparing for the challenging task ahead. And I look forward to the Islamic Republic finalizing its negotiation structures and appointing a significant number of women in the High Council for National Reconciliation and its leadership. We, of course, also urge the Taliban to show their commitment to empowering women's voices in the peace process, which could help ease the very real fears expressed by many Afghans about the potential for their rights to be eroded under a future peace agreement. It is time for the Taliban to demonstrate a commitment to the women of Afghanistan. In addition, female victims of conflict, including women with disabilities, female-headed households, widowed women, and girls, must also be included. As demonstrated in UNAMA's mid-year Protection of Civilian Report, which was just released today, women and girls are disproportionately affected by the conflict in Afghanistan. In the first 6 months of 2020, the conflict caused 397 female casualties and over 1,000 child casualties, representing over 40% of the overall civilian casualty toll. So when the peace process addresses, as it must, victim-centered justice, women and girls must be front and center. This leads me to an all-important issue of human rights in the context of peace. It is important for member countries to know that Afghans have overwhelmingly made clear that they wish to see fundamental human rights protected in any peace agreement. In a recent survey, over 70% of Afghans stated clearly that human rights is of primary importance in the peace agreement. Afghan women have made substantial gains, as we know, but these gains cannot be lost. And it's important as well to understand that Afghanistan is party to 7 UN international human rights treaties. These are minimum human rights obligations, and they are here to stay. Women's rights are part of these. They are not separate. They are not disposable. So much yet remains to be done. Independently of how the peace process turns out, some steps can be taken right now to support women's rights. One is to strengthen the protection of female human rights defenders who experience alarming levels of harassment. We call on the government and the international community to take concrete steps to support these women. Recent civil society initiatives, such as the draft of Human Rights Defender Strategy, are indeed positive, but more is needed. Only by protecting and supporting these women can we ensure that their contributions are included. Secondly, I draw the attention to the recent draft family law of the government of Afghanistan, and we look forward to working with them on this law, particularly as it relates to the age of marriage, polygamy, and maintenance and custody of children, after the dissolution of marriage. As Afghanistan prepares for peace talks, it is critical that the Afghan government signals to all Afghans, women and girls, that there will be no regression on their most fundamental human rights. And the Taliban leadership must take notice. So as we move into the peace negotiations, we should make sure that we are under no illusion that this will be easy or that these issues will be resolved quickly. women's rights and freedoms may be among the most challenging topics on the agenda in the peace process. The world will be watching. The world will be watching to see how all parties and individuals treat this important topic and whether the peace negotiators are working for the benefit of 100% of Afghans. Achieving women's full participation in the peace process and sustaining and building on their rights will require concerted efforts on the part of many actors, including all of us here today. And we will all be asked to account for the part that we played. We are providing, as UNAMA, technical support and expertise on peace processes, and we'll continue to work closely with the Afghan government, the Afghan civil society, and indeed the Taliban to make sure that the peace process is as positive as it needs to be for the women and men of Afghanistan. The coming months will reveal the true commitment of all the parties sitting together alongside Afghans from all walks of life and discussing what a peaceful Afghanistan looks like. We urge the Afghan political leadership and the Taliban to show compassion and determination as they go forward to work in good faith towards peace with and for all Afghans. Thank you so much. I look forward to our conversation.
Thank you very much, Deborah, SRSG. Now I would like to invite our sister, Ambassador Alia Ahmed bin Saif Al Thani, the PR of Qatar.
It says there's only 4.
Yeah, Deborah, can you mute your speaker? Right. Okay. Alia, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Jani. I would like to begin by thanking the distinguished ambassadors of Germany, Afghanistan, the United Kingdom, and Indonesia for co-hosting this timely Arria-Formula meeting today, and of course, and for your kind invitation to me to join the panel. Madam First Lady Rolagani, we have been inspired by your words today and for your tireless efforts to fully integrate women and girls into the Afghan society and into the workforce, and as well creating the platforms at the national level to discuss the role of Afghan women as messengers for peace. Your representation here in New York through your able ambassador, my sister, Ambassador Adela Raz, is a true example of Afghanistan achievement on this front. I'm honored as well to share this virtual stage with the 3 distinguished Afghan women leaders, Minister Safi, Dr. Sarabi, and Ms. Harris. I also, of course, commend the work of SRSG Lyons for her and UNAMA's effort to fulfill their mandate, including the supporting the political peace process and the full participation of Afghan women in the peace process. Ambassador Jani, Mr. Chairman, distinguished participants, I would like to recognize, of course, as well the role of the Group of Friends of Women in Afghanistan, co-chaired by the United Kingdom and Afghanistan, which was launched last year in recognition of the growing importance of supporting and empowering women in Afghanistan, of which the state of Qatar is a proud member in our pursuit as a strong partner of Afghanistan in its march towards achieving peace, development, and promoting and protecting human rights for all, including, of course, for women and girls. Conflict prevention, mediation, and sustaining peace are given priorities in Qatar's foreign policy. Lasting peace in Afghanistan is a paramount issue for Qatar. In an effort to support Afghanistan restore peace and prosperity, Qatar has undertaken substantial mediation efforts to support and facilitate the peace process in Afghanistan. The significance and success of these efforts is reflected in the signing last February in Doha of the agreement for bringing peace to Afghanistan between the United States and the Taliban, which the Security Council welcomed as a significant step towards ending the war in Afghanistan, an agreement that would unlock the intra-Afghan talks between the Taliban and the Afghan stakeholders. I would like to highlight the intra-Afghan peace conference, which was held between 7th and 9th July 2019 in Doha last year, under the auspices of Germany and Qatar. A key objective of that meeting was to ensure women full representation during the talks. This is in line with Qatar's commitment to ensure the rights of women are safeguarded in peace processes. Moreover, without women participation, a broadly based peace settlement is less likely. The peace talks, of course, counted with the participation of outstanding women from Afghanistan representing the government, civil society, and the media. In this, we welcomed, of course, the emphasis made by the Security Council, including in its recent resolution 2513 on Afghanistan, which affirmed that any political settlement must protect the rights of all Afghans, including women, youth, and minorities. Mr. Chairman, as Afghanistan makes headway towards peace, development, and the promotion and protection for human rights for all, the commitment to consolidate the achievements made thus far in the area of empowerment of Afghan women and the protection of their rights and interests should be upheld, especially in the upcoming phase of the intra-Afghan negotiation and peace process. In this regard, I would like to reaffirm Qatar's steadfast commitment to support the Afghanistan, including continued support for an Afghani-led and owned reconciliation process with a view to bringing peace, stability, and security. In undertaking these efforts, we will continue to support the international commitments, community commitments to endorse the full participation of women in the peace process that will ensure that the eventual peace agreement would guarantee the protection of the rights and interests. And I thank you again for this opportunity to participate in this timely meeting.
Thanks so much, Alia, for your remarks. Now I would like to give back the floor to Jonathan. Jonathan, you have the mic.
Thank you very much, Gianni, and thank you for keeping us as close to time as possible. Colleagues on the Security Council, I know that you are past masters and experts at speaking succinctly, concisely, and brilliantly to land your point. So this is your opportunity to prove to a watching world your professional skills in this regard, and to not only speak within the 4 minutes allocated, but even to make it shorter and yet more impactful. So I'm really hopeful that's going to be what we do now, because I would like to make sure we have time for questions to the panel and to go back to the panel. So I'm going to start with the United States of America and Kelly Craft. Over to you, Kelly.
Thank you, Jonathan. I'd like to thank the distinguished briefers here today for providing us with their insight and expertise on this very important issue. And I'd also like to thank the co-sponsors for organizing this meeting. And I'm going to try to make this very short, Jonathan, but it's really difficult when you're every word that you have is important, especially on an issue such as this. We know that Afghan women for far too long have borne the brunt of this lengthy conflict, and that they have been regularly excluded from discussions about Afghanistan's future. We recognize there have been social, economic, and political impediments in Afghanistan that have hindered meaningful inclusion of women and girls. No country can be successful on the journey to sustainable peace and self-reliance while excluding half of its population. That is why the advancement of women's economic empowerment and the promotion of women's human rights is and has always been central to the U.S. efforts in Afghanistan. Through the Trump administration's diplomatic engagement and assistance programs, we continue to advocate for measures to respect and promote women's rights, combat gender-based violence, create quality educational opportunities, help women to join the workforce, and expand access to quality health care. We also advocate for more Afghan women judges, prosecutors, and law enforcement officers, as these government officials are essential for upholding women's rights and for ensuring equal access to Afghanistan's justice sector. The protection and advancement of the rights of Afghan women and girls and the meaningful participation of women in all political processes are not only beneficial to the welfare of the Afghan people, but also the future and stability and prosperity of the nation. We welcome the appointment of 4 women out of the 21 members of the intra-Afghan negotiation team, one of who briefed us today and highlighted the important role of women in negotiations. For the negotiations to deliver lasting peace, women need to be substantively involved at every level and in all peace structures throughout this process. Their inclusion will help promote negotiation outcomes that reflect not only the needs of women, but of all Afghans, including on critical issues such as political, security, judicial, and legal reforms, social and economic recovery, governing arrangements, and transitional justice. For our part, the United States is training Afghan women in negotiation, persuasion, and advocacy across Afghanistan. In 2019, 25 Afghan women took part in the US-funded training intended to develop the skills of a cadre of female senior officials to be able to participate in top-level negotiations and to assess their implementation. They, along with female members of the negotiating team, continue to receive mentorship through an online platform of collaboration tools and export resources. These negotiations will have a direct impact on the lives of all Afghans. I want to echo the UN Security Council UNAMA June press statement, which underscores that the economic, social, political, and development gains made in the last 19 years, including with respect to the rights of women, children, and minorities, must be protected and built upon. The ability of women and girls to participate in education, contribute to the economy, access health, social and legal services, and engage in politics, law enforcement, and the justice sector must continue to expand in all parts of the country. Women in Afghanistan have long championed these issues, and addressing them is critical for lasting and sustainable peace. We thank those today who have come here in support of Afghans' women's meaningful participation in their country's future. The Trump administration wholeheartedly supports these efforts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kelly. And I now give the floor to the representative of France. Nicolas, over to you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Let me first thank the UK, Afghanistan, Germany, and Indonesia for this very timely meeting. I would like to pay special tribute to Ambassador Raz for her tireless efforts in promoting the women, peace, and security agenda in Afghanistan. And I would also like to thank the First Lady of Afghanistan for her engagement and the panelists for their contributions. The tragic attack against a maternity in Dasht-e-Barshi on May 12th clearly reminds us that women and children are the first victims of terrorism. Violence must stop. We support the Secretary General's appeal for a ceasefire as recently outlined by Resolution 2532 on COVID-19. As the pandemic has taken a greater toll on women with consequences on their jobs and exposition to domestic violence, our priority must be to ensure their safety and to support women human rights defenders. We welcome the initiatives taken by President Ashraf Ghani in response to the undergoing campaign, Where is My Name?, to allow women to have their names on their ID cards. The agreements of February 29th raised hopes, but there will also be no lasting peace without the full, equal, and meaningful participation of Afghan women. We call on all negotiating parties to recognize this fact and take action to ensure higher inclusion of women in peace talks. We commend the designation by the Afghan government of several women in the negotiating team. It is sadly not enough. Women have to have a seat at both sides of the table and at all stages of negotiations. How can we ensure that the Taliban engage truthfully with women negotiators and on women's issues? France hosted a delegation of Afghan women to learn from their experience and to give these women from different backgrounds tools to engage in the negotiating process. We cannot accept the fallacy that women are absent because of so-called insufficient adequate profiles when women play an instrumental role in the day-to-day life as educators, workers, and community leaders. I want to ask collectively what more could be done to ensure that women are engaged in the proper training processes. Mr. President, let me conclude by reaffirming that safeguarding human rights, especially women's rights, remains a priority of our position with regard to the situation in Afghanistan. This matter will be one of the revelators of the Taliban's claim to accept that Afghanistan has changed since they were ousted from power. There can be no turning back. We must collectively reiterate our support for an inclusive peace process in which UNAMA and the UN in Afghanistan have a key role to play. This will be an essential condition for a strong support to the future Afghanistan from the international community. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nicolas. And I now give the floor to the ambassador of the Dominican Republic. Jose, you have the floor.
Yes, 1 second, please. Can you give the turn to somebody else? I just lost my speech.
Sure, and that goes down as the briefest speech on record, for which I thank you, Jose. And we now go to the ambassador of Vietnam, Quy.
Thank you, Jonathan. I first thank the organizers and all the panelists for their comprehensive statement. And I welcome the President of First Lady of Afghanistan to our meeting today. Mr. President, Security Council Resolution 2513 marks a significant milestone for Afghanistan. It has laid foundation for the pursuit of the strong desires of Afghan people, including Afghan women, for durable peace and prosperity. Vietnam fully supports the Afghan-led and Afghan-owned inclusive peace process and welcomes the recent effort of the government, especially in protecting and enhancing the women's role. We welcome the increasing participation of Afghan women in various aspects of social life, as well as the peace process with nearly 25% of negotiation team being women. We also commend the UNAMA, regional and other countries for contributing to peace and development in Afghanistan. Despite the progress made, Afghan women and girls are still among the most vulnerable groups. We are concerned over the recent violence and terrorist attacks which kill hundreds of women and girls. Sexual violence and gender-based discrimination, the COVID-19 pandemics, and the use of women and girls in illicit drug activity remain critical challenges. While advancing the role of women in the peace process is important, it is also crucial to address the root causes of the current challenges, particularly in achieving sustainable peace and promoting socio-economic development, where women can fully participate in and benefit from. In this regard, I would like to make 3 points. First and foremost, we must further strengthen protections for Afghan women. A timely, permanent ceasefire can put an end to violence and suffering. Women, including women in politics and their family, must be protected from violence, discrimination, and intimidation. It is also crucial to equip women and girls with the better tools to protect them from the conflict-related risks, as well as to build their resilience against climate change, diseases, and natural disasters. Second, we encourage efforts to promote meaningful participation of women at all stages of the peace processes and in building the future of Afghanistan. Obstacles, resistance, and other risks to such participation should be removed. Awareness and education are the key. Third, we call for the strengthened partnerships in the protection and empowerment of women in Afghanistan. International partners, including UNAMA and UN Women, should provide further technical support to the Afghan government. In this connection, UNAMA can also lead by example by finding ways and means to increase the proportion of its female staff, especially national professional offices, NPOs, and national staffs. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Kui. I'm going to go back to Jose, Dominican Republic. Jose.
Thank you, Jonathan. First, I would like to our gratitude and welcome to the First Lady for her participation, and our thanks to the panelists. Let me congratulate Afghanistan, Germany, Indonesia, and the United Kingdom for bringing us together to discuss such a pressing issue. Afghan women have fought outstandingly and ferociously for gender equality. They have made great progress since the fall of the Taliban regime, which had exposed them to endless suffering. Their contributions are evident in all fields, including the security sector, government, civil society, media, and science and technology. Today, Afghanistan has women ministers, governors, and judges, with 28% of women comprising its parliament and the first woman ambassador to the United Nations. The country is in the second phase of its National Action Plan on WPS, with the inaction of the Elimination of Violence Against Women law and the decision of its Attorney General to put women's rights protection on top of its agenda. Despite much progress made, Afghan women continue to make strides towards more equal rights, and the country is a difficult place for women to thrive, and especially in rural areas. This is a moment for both fear and hope for Afghan women as intra-Afghan negotiations approach. It is a collective responsibility of the government of Afghanistan, the Security Council, and the international community to support their hard-won rights. Afghan women are in the fight not just of their rights, but of their lives. The Taliban continues to prevent women and girls from exercising many of their fundamental human rights despite their discouraged, and regrettably, women have been left out of more than 20 rounds of its informal talks. Taliban's leaders said in February that women's rights would be guaranteed under Islam. These incongruences and their misogynistic past are some of the reasons for the existing mistrust. Additionally, COVID-19 lockdowns exacerbate the dire situation many Afghan women already face related to domestic violence and other gender-based violence. Women's inclusion is even more crucial given their critical inputs on the link between combating the pandemic and building peace. Intra-Afghan talks are the best means to end this conflict and to have a fully unified force to pursue success, a pursuit that must count with the participation of every segment of society with the goal not just to stop violence, but to foster tolerance. The Dominican Republic shares the concern of many Afghan women that their rights may be compromised if a peace settlement is rushed and limited to core security issues of terrorism, and it has been the case before. Protecting women's rights needs to be one of the key objectives of this process. Therefore, we insist that women and young women, including women living in rural areas, need to participate actively and meaningfully in all stages and dimensions of the peace process to guarantee its sustainability and possibilities to materialize. They are an essential component that speaks to the collective aspiration. There's a window of opportunity here. Women's participation won't circle solely around military action, power sharing, and territory gains, but can ensure that issues like political and legal reforms, social and economic recovery, and transitional justice are priorities in any peace accord. Mr. Chair, women human rights activists in Afghanistan are under attack. A month ago, a young woman human rights activist and member of the Afghanistan Independent Human Rights Commission, Fatima Khalil, was killed. Human rights defenders must be protected, and threats and attacks against them must be investigated and prosecuted. These types of violence could hamper the peace process. Finally, it is critical that the Council engages more often and systematically with the UN Group of Friends of Afghan Women, co-chaired by Afghanistan and the United Kingdom, as a key strategic and useful platform to provide its full support to Afghan women in order to safeguard their important gains towards their rights and to ensure that any prospective outcomes in the peace process guarantees these rights. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Jose. I now give the floor to the Ambassador of Tunisia, Kais. You have the floor.
Thank you, Jonathan. At the outset, let me thank the delegation of Afghanistan, Indonesia, Germany, and the UK for organizing this timely meeting and for giving us the opportunity to listen to such distinguished briefers to whom we express our full appreciation for the remarkable presentation they shared with us. We continue to follow closely the complex situation in Afghanistan, particularly the progress towards intra-Afghan negotiation between the Afghan government and the Taliban, as stipulated in the agreement for bringing peace to Afghanistan concluded in February, which Council member supported in Resolution 2513 adopted in March. We hope that this forthcoming negotiation will end the war in Afghanistan and pave the way for a much needed long-term sustainable peace in this country, and we call on all parties to carry out confidence-building measures to facilitate the commencement of these negotiations, including through stopping attacks and all forms of violence. Women have suffered deeply during Afghanistan's years of war, and they desperately long for peace. However, despite the significant barriers still faced by Afghan women, there have been notable improvements in women's empowerment politically, economically, and socially. Today, there are more women holding positions of power than any other time in history. There are women in ministers and governors, and judges and ambassadors and police and soldiers, and Afghanistan parliament has a higher percentage of women. Having said that, there is still a lot of work to do, and the briefers today reminded us of how fragile and reversible these gains are. Likewise, it is equally crucial to underline that any political settlement in Afghanistan should safeguard the rights of women as enshrined in the Constitution and clearly reflect the important gains achieved in this country in terms of women's empowerment. We fully support the government of Afghanistan in its commitment and endeavor to secure equality, empowerment, and the full realization of the rights of women and girls, and to promote the advent of a new, peaceful, and reconciled Afghanistan with women participating fully and equally in decision-making and contributing to the prosperity and stability of the country throughout all segments of society. In Tunisia, we had made the strategic choice upon independence in 56, that of women's equality and empowerment. More than 6 decades later, Tunisian women acting especially under the civil society played a pivotal role in the country's peaceful political democratic transition. In closing, I can't find a strong expression which best encapsulates the merits of women's empowerment than the Nobel Prize laureate Malala Yousafzai when she said, I quote, "We cannot succeed when half of us are held back." I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Kais. And I am now giving the floor to the DPR of Niger, Aogi, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. We thank the organizers. We welcome the presence of the First Lady to this meeting, and we thank all the briefers. Mr. President, if the past is willingly forgotten, the wounds are still alive, and for Afghanistan to heal, the time has come to give a voice to women because they have carried the brunt of the suffering during this decade of war. Countless people have shared stories of pain, so we will not go into them again. Instead, what we intend to do today is to celebrate their abnegation and to inscribe ourselves into their mindset of making the women of Afghanistan the driving forces behind this intra-Afghan peace process that is source of much hope for the Afghan people and the international community. Despite significant progress, our current models of society continue to oppress women in the most inspected social intertwining. Therefore, and as we have said time and time again, the success, materialization, and credibility of the Afghan peace process lies on the involvement of the women in every step from pre-negotiation to the intra-talks. This should first and foremost start with inclusivity. As has mentioned His Excellency Adela Raz, inclusivity means the inclusion of women and also the voice of youth and different ethnic groups. In that respect, Niger would like to advocate for a process that not only foster and enhances the right of women, but also solidify the gain made in the past 2 decades. Achieving the entails the ongoing representation of women and negotiation team, the provision of gender expertise, both training and technical input to mediators and negotiation team to understand how women's rights are part of issue in the discussion, whether that they be ceasefire, political power sharing, and justice effort, and mechanism for civil society to input ideas, concern, and proposal as started in study of the International Peace Institute for Global Observatory. We also believe that there should be a concerted effort to promote women leadership, not only from the government, but also the international community. As such, the meeting of today provides a great template as it is a collaborative effort from all those that care about Afghanistan and is led by an all-woman panel. Although provisions have already been made for women representation, putting them in charge in the bureaucracy and making them the face of civil services, both nationally and abroad, will be crucial in normalizing their participation in public life, but also set the precedent for future generation of girls and boys. Mr. President, ensuring women's participation and promoting their right in this peace process would not be complete without a meaningful participation of the civil society. As mentioned by a former MP and civil society activities, I quoted in this special report of the U.S. Institute of Peace, women leaders in this sector have been a pressure group, keeping a check on government policies and calling for immediate action in certain cases, such as the presidential executive order on the elimination of violence against women law. This group can not only help normalize a culture of advocacy when it's come to women, but also ensure that every voice is heard, especially for those living in the rural areas, as they represent the majority of Afghan women. To conclude, we would like to reiterate what has been said in previous meetings on this subject. That is, history has shown that any time women are engaged and are given a meaningful place at the table, lasting peace and sustainable development follow. As we celebrate the 20th anniversary of the Women, Peace and Security Agenda, we must support the Afghan government in not only fostering and harnessing the right of women and other groups, but also solidify the gain made in the past 2 decades so that their vision for the future of Afghanistan is fully taken into account. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aogi. Now we are halfway through our Security Council speakers, so I'm just going to put the reminder in for the second 6 to please keep your remarks as concise and therefore impactful as possible. And I'm going to go now to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Halima.
Thank you, Ambassador. As a member of the group of Friends of Afghan Women, St. Vincent and the Grenadines welcomes this opportunity for dialogue with Afghan women on concrete ways in which the international community can continue to support the remarkable progress you've made toward the reconfiguration of Afghanistan's economic, political, and social systems. However, we recognize that the full realization of gender justice remains tied to the success of the peace process and its promise of inclusive and sustainable development. We wish to thank Germany, the United Kingdom, Afghanistan, and Indonesia for hosting this timely meeting, given the imminent intra-Afghan negotiations. We are particularly grateful for the expert insights shared by our distinguished keynote speaker, Her Excellency Rula Ghani, First Lady of Afghanistan, as well as those by distinguished speakers and panelists, Her Excellency Dr. Hassani Safi, Her Excellency Adela Raz, Her Excellency Ali Ahmed bin Saif Al Thani, Dr. Habiba Sahari, Ms. Giselle Harris, and SRSG Deborah Lyons. The full, effective, and meaningful participation of diverse Afghan women in all political and socioeconomic processes, including the upcoming intra-Afghan negotiations, is essential to guarantee the institutional changes required for gender justice. It is indeed vital that we support the decisive actions to which our panelists spoke earlier in order to preserve and extend the hard-won gains Afghan women have made over the past 19 years. We recognize as significant the various steps to implement the National Action Plan to effect Resolution 1325, the greater involvement of women as decision makers in government and executive positions of the civil service, the increased participation of girls in education, and a growing shift in public consciousness in support of the expanded political and socioeconomic participation of women and girls. Indeed, women and youth have demonstrated remarkable leadership in COVID prevention education. The inclusion of 4 women in the 21-member negotiating team of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan is also noteworthy. To extend these gains, we support the Secretary General's call for greater participation of women in the growing domestic architecture for peace, including the Ministry of Peace Affairs and the High Council for Peace and National Reconciliation. Afghan women have consistently advocated for more inclusive government, as we heard today, emerging as leaders at various stages of the peace process. You have stood as drivers of peace and development. You, alongside other members of civil society, have led calls for ceasefire. It is an honor for St. Vincent and the Grenadines to stand with you as friends and for the international community to learn with you as we recommit to redressing historical gendered inequalities and all gender-based harms. In solidarity with you, we lend our voice to the call to secure your necessary and effective participation in the upcoming negotiations and all subsequent dialogue and actions to promote a peaceful and prosperous Afghanistan. We denounce the recent surge in violence that continues to claim the lives of civilians, including women and children, and members of the Afghanistan National Security Forces. These attacks run counter to the spirit of the agreement for bringing peace to Afghanistan, welcomed in Resolution 2513. And as the commencement of the intra-Afghan negotiations fast approaches, there is urgent need for a cessation of all hostilities to secure the important gains made towards rebuilding more inclusive institutions and relations to ensure that those are not jeopardized. In closing, we wish to just pose the following questions based on some of the conversations, some of the discussion from our panelists. And we were wondering what are some of the concrete steps that must be taken at the institutional level and decision-making levels, as well as at the level of capacity building to ensure that diverse women participate in the upcoming and subsequent negotiations, as well as in political and socio-economic processes in general. I thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And I now give the floor to the Belgian DPR, Karen. Over to you. We're not hearing you, Karen. I think you're maybe muted.
Okay. Do you hear me now? Yeah, I think so. Thank you so much, Jonathan, for giving me the floor and for organizing this together with our other colleagues. First of all, of course, I want to thank all the excellencies for their intervention. And I have listened closely to your recommendations and experiences, and I want to emphasize that you can count on the support of Belgium to support you and your efforts. As has been stated, the past 20 years, Afghan society has made progress in realizing the rights of women as guaranteed in the constitution, and I want really to commend the Afghan government for its dedication and efforts. All eyes now are currently focused on the intra-Afghan peace talks to be launched in Doha, and current female participation should be scaled up, and any future agreement must guarantee the human rights of women and girls. And we join the call of the vast majority of Afghans who will not accept turning back the clock of darker times. As was stated before, the level of violence in Afghanistan remains alarmingly high, and sometimes women are especially targeted, such as the recent atrocious attack on maternity ward in Kabul. We condemn this in the strongest terms, and we condemn any violence against women-led NGOs and women human rights defenders as Fatima Khalil, educators, health workers, and journalists. We are furthermore concerned about reports of an increase in domestic and gender-based violence as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and we urge for the response to be inclusive and gender responsive. The conflict in Afghanistan is the world's deadliest for children, as was shown recently by the new report on the protection of civilians. And we are deeply concerned at the scale and severity of grave violations of children's rights in Afghanistan. Protecting girls and boys should be at the center of our work. We urge all parties to swiftly implement the recommendations agreed by the Working Group on Children and Armed Conflict. From our side, we are supporting the implementation of the National Action Plan for the Resolution 1325, together with UN Women. We are also a proud member of the Group of Friends of Women in Afghanistan, and the EU is working to prevent and end violence against women in Afghanistan through the Joint Spotlight Initiative, together with the UN. Talking about the EU, as outlined in the latest EU Council conclusions on Afghanistan, any future support that is expected from Belgium or its EU partners will be conditional upon the commitment and the continued commitment of Afghanistan to promoting and protecting the rights of women and girls. The promotion of women's rights in Afghanistan falls squarely within the mandate of this Council, and soon we will renew the mandate of the UN mission in Afghanistan, and we expect the promotion of women's participation and women's rights to remain at the center of its work. I want just to ask a small question to the different panelists. I was wondering if there are any indications whether there will be any female participation in the delegation of the Taliban for the peace talks. Thank you so much, Jonathan.
Thank you very much, Karen. And I now give the floor to the DPR of Estonia. Over to Gert.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. I wish to welcome the presence of First Lady of Afghanistan today. And first off, I want to thank the organizers of today's meeting and all the panelists for their comprehensive interventions. Estonia expresses its firm support to Afghanistan on remaining committed to advancing women's empowerment and safeguarding the rights of women and girls as enshrined in Afghanistan's constitution. We have seen considerable progress. However, a lot of challenges remain towards securing equality, empowerment, and the full realization of women's rights. We emphasize the importance of preserving and building on the achievements of the past 2 decades with regard to the women's rights in Afghanistan. Estonia hopes that the intra-Afghan negotiations will start as soon as possible and bring along a long-term sustainable peace. Estonia underlines the importance of promoting and protecting the rights of the Afghan women and girls in peace process, which has to be inclusive and involve all layers of the society. Women need to be substantively involved at every level, from pre-negotiation to the actual talks. Women must be the essential participants of the greater infrastructure of the peace process. Empowerment is not simply having a diverse set of people in a system, but also letting them drive the narrative and establish the framework. Estonia has and will continue to support the reforms that Afghanistan has taken in this regard. Since 2011, we have provided health education and support to women and girls in northern and eastern Afghanistan through our development cooperation. This proved to be especially useful in the health crisis we are facing now. In addition, we contribute to the higher education of women in Afghanistan through development and entrepreneurship courses. The role of women in all fields of life must be valued more, especially now during the pandemic. Women continue to be disproportionately more impacted by COVID-19. women and girls face distinct and increased risks because of the pandemic in many fields, from health to economy, from security to social protection, including increasing levels of violence. Ladies and gentlemen, it is impossible to encompass all the complexities associated with the issues at hand in a 4-minute statement. However, the message should be clear. What has been accomplished must be preserved and built upon. Women must be meaningfully included in every step of the peace process. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Gert, for your intervention. And I now pass the floor to the Political Council of China, Xiaozhen.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you very much. China appreciate the 4 co-hosts to have organized this Arria-Formula meeting. I also thank all the briefers for their detailed briefing. Women are important builders of, contributors to, and participants in the Afghan peace process. The international community should support Afghanistan in enhancing the protection of women, ensuring women's full participation and decision-making in political life and the peace process. At the same time, it is also important to adequately accommodate and respect social realities, culture, practice, and religious traditions, build up the country's capacities relating to women's empowerment, and respect the country's national ownership. First, the state concerned bear the primary responsibility for promoting the effective participation of women in the peace process. China firmly supports an inclusive peace process that is Afghan-led and Afghan-owned. We encourage Afghans to discuss the women empowerment in their dialogues and negotiations, and reach agreement on the country's future political architecture. China is ready to provide a platform for inter-Afghan talks. We will continue to work with others on the mechanisms such as the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and the trilateral China-Afghanistan-Pakistan dialogue. Second, equal development opportunities, poverty eradication, and high-quality education are important conditions for Afghan women to participate in the peace process effectively. The international community should help Afghanistan leverage its strengths into regional cooperation and ensure all its people, including women, benefit from the development. Recently, through Gwadar port on the China-Pakistan economic corridor, Afghanistan's re-export business has started formal commercial operation. Afghanistan has made new progress in integrating into regional economy. China welcomes this and calls on regional countries, especially neighboring countries, to increase investment in Afghanistan's infrastructure construction. Third, the international community should do their best to support Afghanistan's fight against the COVID-19 pandemic and create a favorable environment to promote women's development and participation. The COVID-19 pandemic threatens the lives and health of all Afghanistan people, including women, and increases the pressure on the country's economic and social development. So far, China has provided 3 batches of anti-epidemic supplies to Afghanistan, and such assistance is making a difference in Afghanistan. We call for strengthening regional cooperation and connectivity to help Afghanistan safeguard public health, revive its economy, and protect women's rights. We wish that through the efforts of the Afghan people and with the help of the international community, the women of Afghanistan could enjoy further development and make more contribution to the peace process. I thank you, Jonathan, and thank you, the co-chairs.
Thank you very much, Xiaozhen. And I now have pleasure in giving the floor to the representative of Russia, I believe Dina. Over to you. Oh, we can't hear you. Can you just check you're not on mute? Still not coming across. It says you're not muted on the system. Maybe it's on your computer or your microphone. Try again. Nope. Sorry. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna suggest we pass to our next speaker. Perhaps Bella, who is my colleague dealing with the events, can be in touch and try and see if we can work out what's happening. You're certainly not shown as muted at the moment on the system. You're shown as unmuted to us all, but we still can't hear you. So it might be something at your end. I think our last speaker before going back to the Russian Federation is Harshana from South Africa. Please, over to you.
Thank you. Also, thank you to the missions of Afghanistan, Germany, Indonesia, and the United Kingdom for organizing this meeting. I would also like to thank Her Excellency, the First Lady of Afghanistan, and the panelists for their interventions. Allow me to begin by reiterating South Africa's support for the political process in Afghanistan and the recent agreement reached by the political leadership, and hope that the parties can build on these positive developments by injecting renewed impetus and support for the start of intra-Afghan peace talks. Afghanistan is at a critical juncture in its peace process, and the steadfast commitment by women to continue to play an active role in the peace process will ensure that Afghanistan finds lasting peace and security for all Afghan people. A critical part of the intra-Afghan dialogue must be to ensure that the vast gains made in women's and girls' rights are protected. Sustainable peace will only be achieved if women know that they will never again be subjected to the deprivation of their fundamental and essential rights. The participation of women in all levels of the peace process will ensure this. As previously stated by South Africa's Minister of International Relations and Cooperation during the Security Council open debate on sexual violence and conflict earlier this month, South Africa recognizes that sexual violence is inextricably linked to gender inequality. We must continue to strongly advocate for the equal participation and full involvement of women in all processes in the maintenance and promotion of peace and security. This year is a significant year as we commemorate the 20th anniversary of the adoption of Resolution 1325, the 25th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and Plan of Action, and the 75th anniversary of the signing of the Charter of the United Nations, amongst others. It is also the review year for silencing the guns on the African continent. These commemorations will be hollow if we do not take the necessary steps to fulfill their objectives and implement the ideas and commitments that have been made in adopting these landmark outcomes. South Africa also believes that if we are to advance the cause of women's rights and their empowerment, the onus is on member states to continually look at measures to strengthen the full and effective implementation of all Security Council decisions. This includes the recommendations of the 2015 global study pertaining to women, peace, and security, in line with Security Council's Resolution 2493, which was unanimously adopted last October under South Africa's presidency of the Council at the annual debate on women, peace, and security, which emphasized the imperative of implementing all Security Council decisions on WPS. South Africa welcomes the government of Afghanistan's continued efforts to advance the promotion and protection of women's rights. This includes the diverse representation of women in the government of Afghanistan's negotiation team, the implementation of Afghanistan's second iteration of the 1325 National Action Plan, and the Women, Peace and Security Agenda, and hopes that this commitment continues during future discussions. I thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Let's try to go back to our Russian colleague and see, Dina, can we hear you this time?
Can you hear me now?
Perfectly, thank you.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Good afternoon, colleagues. At the outset, let me thank the invited speakers for the informative briefings. We have attentively listened to the First Lady of Afghanistan Mrs. Rula Ghani, Minister of Women's Affairs, Ms. Hasina Safi, as well as Special Representative of the Secretary General and Head of UNAMA, Ms. Deborah Lyons, Dr. Habiba Sarabi, Miss Ghazal Harris, as well as the permanent representatives of Afghanistan, Ms. Adela Raz, and of Qatar, Sheikha Aliya Ahmed bin Saif Al Thani. We have carefully considered the objective of today's meeting. We stand in solidarity with all people of Afghanistan in their aspiration to end the protracted war, restore peace and stability. A political solution to the conflict in this country remains more relevant than ever, especially now when the window of opportunity for direct talks is open. We have a genuine interest in promoting the Afghan-led and Afghan-owned peace and reconciliation process and the subsequent stabilization in the country. The conflict in Afghanistan has already resulted in numerous civilian deaths as well as casualties, with women and children on the front line and displacement. Afghanistan continues to be shaken by large-scale bloody terrorist attacks, including in Kabul. Russia continues to support bringing all Afghans together at the negotiating table to decide their own future. Inclusive political settlement with representatives of all parties and socio-political groups, including women, is at the heart of our efforts. We are convinced that broad discussions are the key to achieving peace in the country. The swift start of intra-Afghan talks is our high priority. We strongly believe this should be a common goal of consolidated efforts of the regional partners and international community that will help Afghan people, including women, to achieve lasting peace. Unfortunately, not all commitments are fully met so far. Further delays in intra-Afghan negotiations with creating new preconditions can somehow undermine fragile peace process. We sincerely hope that Afghans won't let themselves lose the momentum and we find an acceptable by all agreement enabling to pave the way to sustainable peace in the country that is united, independent, and free of drug and terrorism. Russia will remain committed to supporting the people of Afghanistan in achieving a peaceful and prosperous future. I thank you.
Thank you very much, and for persevering with the technical problems. I'm going to pass the floor now to Germany, to Christoph Heusgen, who's going to run the next part of this session.
Yes, thanks, Jonathan, for having done the role before. I'm happy to take over. Looking at the time, I'm not going to give another speech, but I go directly to giving the floor to Norway and Uzbekistan, who are two members of the so-called Facilitating Five. Starting with Susan Ecke, representative of Norway, which will, as you know, be member of the Security Council starting January 1st. Susan, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, Excellencies, Ministers, and colleagues. Let me begin by extending heartfelt thanks to our co-hosts, Afghanistan, Germany, Indonesia, and the UK for convening this important area meeting and for inviting Norway to participate. My sincere words of gratitude to Her Excellency, First Lady Ghani, for her most insightful remarks, and I would particularly like to commend Her Excellency for the nationwide peace movement that she has initiated, and as well thank all the eminent panelists. Excellencies, Afghanistan has figured prominently on Norway's foreign policy agenda for the last 2 decades. Norwegian military and civilian assistance has had a strong focus on women's rights, opportunities, and equality. Norway supports the Doha Agreement and the US-Afghan Joint Declaration, and we hope intra-Afghan negotiations will commence soon. We are ready to assist the parties if they so wish. We share the expectation of a unified international community articulated by a unanimous Security Council Resolution 2513 that any political settlement inter alia, I quote, must protect the rights of all Afghans, including women, youth, and minorities, end quote. Inclusion of women in peace talks and the protection of human rights, including for women, will remain a priority for Norway. Even though Afghan women have so clearly demonstrated their commitment to peace, women's participation in peace talks in Afghanistan has generally been low. Women have been at the table in very few of the dialogue initiatives throughout the years. But we have heard today that many Afghans and many women fear that achievements from the last 13 years might be lost in the future peace agreements. Involving women is a matter of political will. Women should not be observers to peace. They must contribute with equal rights and obligations as men. Records show that women's inclusion in peace processes lead to more sustainable outcomes. And it was interesting to hear from the minister and others from Afghanistan today about the efforts made by women in preparing for the talks. Excellency, the COVID-19 pandemic raises some specific challenges for peace building. Norway urges the full implementation of Security Council Resolution 2532 with its call for an immediate cessation in hostilities in relation to the threat from COVID-19. The pandemic changes our ways of working, but it does not change the imperative of assuring women's inclusion in peace and security. We need to engage women partners on a strategic level with long-term, flexible, and predictable funding. The fact that they do much with little means should not be an excuse to keep the budget small. Rather, we need to enable them to do more. Unfortunately, we also need to focus on their security. Women peace builders and human rights defenders are exposed to threats and violence. This is a human rights problem and a democratic problem. When key players are unable to do their jobs or are restricted in their activities, this in turn undermines our efforts for peace. Their security is a priority area for Norway. Finally, we need to focus on women's participation in all phases of our peace and security efforts. Norway will certainly continue to stand by the women in this endeavor. During our upcoming term on the Security Council, we will do our part to make sure this agenda remains a top council priority, working with our partners, including our good colleagues here today, to support Afghan women in their quest for peace, justice, and equality. I thank you, Ambassador.
I thank the representative of Norway for her statement. Susan, thank you very much. And I'll give the floor to the PR of Uzbekistan, the neighbor of Afghanistan. Bakhtiar, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I would like to commend the permanent mission of Indonesia, Afghanistan, the United Kingdom, and Germany for convening this Arria-Formula meeting on Afghanistan, and thank the First Lady of Afghanistan, Her Excellency Ruhollah Ghani, for joining us today and for her inspiring address. I would like also to thank distinguished panelists and other speakers for their statement. Today, I would like taking this opportunity to share with you information on efforts made by Uzbekistan to facilitate this peace process in Afghanistan and to support women's rights in the country through education and training. Mr. President, in Uzbekistan, we closely follow the situation in Afghanistan because the prospect of stable and sustainable development in Central Asia are inextricably intertwined with the achievement of a durable peace in this country. Therefore, Uzbekistan has always supported and will continue to support political processes aimed at establishing a long-awaited peace in Afghanistan. In this regard, in Tashkent, we welcome the United States-Taliban agreement signed in Doha last February as an important step towards ending the war and opening the door to intra-Afghan negotiation. We also express support for the agreement reached by political leaders of Afghanistan to form an exclusive government and Supreme Council on National Reconciliation. These steps are indeed the important prerequisite for achieving a sustainable and comprehensive peace in Afghanistan, as well as ensuring security in the region as a whole. We are convinced that the cohesion of all domestic political forces, the development and practical implementation of a unified comprehensive peace program for Afghanistan agreed on regional and global level is the main condition to advance the peace process in this country. We also believe that today Afghanistan should be regarded as a country with a myriad of opportunities rather than a hotbed of terrorism and narco trafficking. Mr. President, Uzbekistan has welcomed a decision to hold the first round of intra-Afghan negotiation in Doha. Herein, we fully share the position of the Afghan side that the upcoming negotiation in Qatar should be conducted without external interference, strictly adhering to a principle, Afghan-led and Afghan-owned. The participant of the intra-Afghan negotiation may also opt for convenient subsequent rounds of negotiation in other countries, including Uzbekistan. Therefore, our side is ready to provide that there is such a request. The platform to host one of the rounds of the inter-Afghan negotiation in the city of Samarkand. In particular, I would like to recall a statement made by the President of Uzbekistan, His Excellency Shavkat Mirziyoyev, back in 2018 during a Tashkent conference on Afghanistan. Quote, Uzbekistan is ready at any stage of the peace process to create all necessary conditions for organizing on its territory direct negotiation between the government of Afghanistan and the Taliban movement. End of quote. This statement unequivocally shows Uzbekistan's strong commitment to facilitate the Afghan peace process. Mr. President, in Uzbekistan, we strongly believe that in the intra-Afghan negotiation process, it is crucial the participation of women to preserve their rights, fully functioning civil society, and other positive achievement gained in the country for the past 19 years. From this perspective, we welcome a European Union's program on supporting Afghan women through their education and training in Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, launched last November as a practical step of international community's concerted efforts in rendering assistance to Afghanistan, which on the one hand, advance women's rights, and on the other hand, help in nurturing national cadre in this country. In Uzbekistan, we established an educational center for Afghan citizens in the city of Termez, where currently 172 students, including 46 women, are studying in such fields as agriculture, railroad management, medical nursing, and other areas. We believe that the further expansion of constructive collaboration with Afghanistan in the field of education would provide us with an opportunity to organize on the basis of this center very short-term courses for Afghan women, thus empowering them with knowledge to make their own contribution to the development of their country. Mr. President, the outbreak of COVID-19 across the globe has significantly altered international community's effort in extending needed tactical humanitarian assistance to Afghanistan, first and foremost to women and children, putting them in a very difficult situation. Uzbekistan, despite current challenges, has provided Afghanistan with humanitarian aid, which included medical supplies, foodstuffs, children's clothes, and other items. Most importantly, our border with Afghanistan remains open for all cargo transit, which was commanded by President Ashraf Ghani during his recent remarks. Concluding, I would like to reiterate that Uzbekistan will continue to support the peace process in Afghanistan and remains committed to expand close cooperation with the government in Kabul, the United Nations, and other stakeholders in advancing a durable peace settlement in this country. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Bakhtiar, for your contribution. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, we are now going back to the panelists. There were a number of questions being raised. For instance, how to institutionalize women's participation, how to do more on capacity building, on the socioeconomic situation, also effects of COVID-19, and also the question I raised at the very beginning, how to make sure that women participation, women strengthening is not only taking place in Kabul and the major cities, but also in the districts and in the provinces. So with this, and then also looking at the time, actually we have, we are supposed to end in 6 minutes, but we won't be able to do that. But if I could ask also the briefers, and I will go back to them one after the other to be short to the point. And it's my pleasure to start with Her Excellency Dr. Hasina Safi, the Minister of Women's Affairs.
Thank you very much, His Excellency. First of all, I would like to recognize the support I heard from the members of the Security Council, and I will emphasize more to back us up for taking the talk into work. About the programs, I think it is worth mentioning that presently Ministry of Women Affairs have done an assessment, and we are developing a report on the situation of women in relation to the COVID and post-COVID. So I will be in contact with Ms. Raz, and I would urge the Security Council members to back us up with the implementation of the report, where we have targeted the women in various sectors, which is agriculture, health, education, economy, social, and various aspects. Basically, about the crisis we all know, but we have specific suggestions where we are trying to overcome the temporary, the midterm, and the long-term programs in order to back them up and so that they stand. About the institutionalization, I think, as I heard, and I'm very happy to hear that some of our friends have taken the note of reform. Reforms have started, and I think basically with the reforms in providing opportunity to the qualified women, we have started institutionalizing the position and the participation of women, which is not just electing, but it is through a very transparent process. And about Kabul versus provinces, I think the very specific indicator is the process of the deputy governors, which has started, which will take us to the systemization of the women participation in provinces. As this is the first time that the way Afghan women figured out their position in parliament for the first time in the history of Afghanistan, women have a cabinet approved position in the provinces, which will back up the Directorate of Afghan Women, which already exists in 34 provinces. In coordinated and joint ways, they will analyze the social, economical, security in various levels in coordination to different other directorates, and we will plan together. I think this is worth mentioning that from the time I am assigned as the Minister of Women Affairs, His Excellency the President has been backing up the ministry a very special allocation of time in cabinet. Through the suggestion of the Women Ministry, presently almost all the cabinet members of Afghanistan are reviewing the participation of women in their ministries, where I posted 4 questions on behalf of Ministry of Women Affairs. The first one was, what is the number of women within your ministries, which level, in which positions? The second one is, what is the budget allocation for women empowerment in your ministry? Where is the budget, off budget or on budget? And the third one is, what is the extraordinary initiative which every ministry has taken in order to proceed with the facilitating environment for the women within the ministry? I am hoping that I will gather the information within 1 month, and definitely we will develop a report. And based on the report, the President has given the authority to the Ministry of Women Affairs to plan ahead for all the development programs, which includes education, agriculture, health, and other economic and social aspects. I will stop here because I would like to not to be very ambitious. This is the present plan, and we will share it with the Security Council members from time to time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Safi. And I now give the floor to Dr. Habiba Sarabi, a member of the negotiating team.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. To be frank, we are looking forward to have women from Taliban side on the negotiation at the negotiation table. During the two dialogue, intra-Afghan dialogue, one in Moscow and the other one is in Doha, both of them I asked the representative of Taliban, Mr. Stanizai, that I wish that you could have women representation in your team. And just he smiled and didn't say anything. The only thing that he said that you could represent all women in Afghanistan. So, but I told him that we wish that to have women from your side. So till now, we didn't hear anything that from the woman presentation in the Taliban team. I hope that in the future for this leverage that we could use it, or from the international community side, or from mediator, that there will be some request that to have women in the Taliban team. How to have the women, rural women voice in the peace talk. The Ministry of Peace with the support, the negotiating team and the support of the Ministry of Peace, we made a range of consultation physically and also virtually with the women in different areas, especially in the rural area, to have their voice on the peace process. And we already started with the initiative of our First Lady, the Voice of Women from the Messenger of Peace, the symposium and the Jirga. We collected the voice of women for the peace process. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sarabi, and you're absolutely right. I think everybody has to send the message to the Taliban that their legitimacy is questioned if they don't have women on their side. I would now like to give the floor to the head of the Afghanistan Ombudsperson's Office, Ms. Geza Harris.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to echo Minister Safi that it's a delight to hear from the members of the Security Council, and particularly the level of support we see for Afghanistan and for Afghan women. It is quite reassuring, and we are grateful for that. I would like to briefly speak about the rural versus urban discussion that was just raised. I think what's important for us to remember is the level of suffering. I think the suffering of women in the cities and the suffering of women in the rural areas are no different than each other. They have equally lost their husbands, or have been left with family members disabled, or have lost their children. I think what's important, and this is an important point to keep in mind, to ensure that women across the country want peace. Different examples were provided. Her Excellency the First Lady spoke about the particular women's jirga, or the symposium for women, where the participation was ensured from 34 provinces. And those were the voices that we have heard. It has just been peace and peace. The State Ministry for Peace, as Dr. Sarabi rightly mentioned, has also done a number of consultations. And therefore, it's everybody's desire and demand to have peace. But we have to keep in mind that the rural women will be a lot more vulnerable in the peace process if women's rights are not kept into consideration. The number of girls who go to school after the Taliban era in the rural areas has significantly increased. And those are the kind of issues that we have to keep in mind, the level of suffering, and eventually what is it that we women will lose regardless of whether we are in the urban centers or in the rural areas. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Geza Harris, for your response. And I now give the floor to the SRSG, Deborah Lyons. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me all right? Yes, okay. I'll try to answer your questions very quickly, one by one, but I think you have heard that from the representatives of the government here on the panel with me, and most certainly from the First Lady, that the government of Afghanistan has already done a great deal to try to advance the position of women, and in particular to ensure that women's rights and women's concerns are institutionalized within the peace structure and the peace process. However, specifically in answer to your question, we do need to see, in addition to the 4 women who sit on the negotiating team, we do need to see the list of candidates for the High Council on Reconciliation, which is going to be comprised of about 100 people. Clearly, there needs to be a large representation of women on that peace structure. Secondly, the Ministry of Peace, the State Ministry of Peace, needs to have a good proportion of women at senior levels. Dr. Abdullah, who has now been given, in his agreement with President Ghani, responsibility for peace, has said that he will ensure that one of the deputies within the Ministry of Peace will be a female. So I think in terms of institutionalizing women into that process, there are initiatives underway, but I do think that we have to keep focus on this area and look to see who these assignments will be. With regard to getting out to the rural areas, certainly we're working with the Ministry of Women's Affairs, with Minister Safi, as well as now the State Ministry of Peace, who is organizing at the local level. Now I think they're in some 10 provinces, but they're expanding to all 34 provinces to organize women's groups to ensure that they are making their voices heard on the peace process, and that those voices are reaching the representatives at the peace table. We're also looking, I should mention to the ambassadors, at an extensive program with the media to ensure that whether you're in an urban area or a rural area, you're hearing conversations or have the opportunity to participate in conversations about what does peace look like for me? How does it impact me? And then trying to channel those conversations into community positions that are put forward to the negotiators at the table. On COVID-19, we are doing a great deal throughout the country, working with the Ministry of Public Health and others to make sure that women are getting the attention that they need, that anyone impacted by COVID is getting the attention they need. And our UN Women group are working strongly with the Ministry of Women's Affairs to tackle the issue of domestic violence, which we have seen in so many countries has been on the rise with COVID-19. Lastly, let me just speak to the Taliban for a moment in response to the question, I believe, from the Russian representative. At this stage, and then following on Dr. Sarabi's comments, on this stage, we do not know if the Taliban will have any female representation on their negotiating team at the table. We do expect and hope that at a minimum, they will have some women as part of their overall delegation. But at this point, we do not have that information. I think it raises very clearly the point that in addition to all of us working together on this and working closely with the Afghan government, we need to be working more closely with the Taliban themselves to ensure that they understand not just the importance of women at the table, but they understand the obligations that Afghanistan faces in being a member of the global community on human rights. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deborah, for your statement there. Now it's my pleasure to give the floor back to the permanent representative of Qatar, Arria.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Christoph. And just briefly to respond to the questions raised about the launch of the intra-Afghan talks in Doha and, of course, the key participation of women, I just want to reiterate what I have mentioned earlier, that Qatar, continues to support for an Afghani-led and owned reconciliation process. For us, it's a key priority, and of course, even under the conditions of COVID-19, Qatar has continued to facilitate with the United States the talks between the government of Afghanistan and the Taliban on the prisoner release. So, in undertaking, of course, these efforts, ensuring that the voices of Afghani women is heard in the peace process will continue to be a key priority for Qatar. So I just wanted to reiterate that point. And again, thank you very much. And I'm very glad that we're part of this very timely conversation. Thank you, Ambassador Christoph.
Thank you, Arria. And then I'll give the floor back to Jonathan.
Thank you very much, Christoph. Colleagues, we are reaching the conclusion of our meeting today. And as we do so, it's my great pleasure to introduce Baroness Fiona Hodgson. Baroness Hodgson is familiar to many of us. I had the opportunity to welcome her at the very beginning of this meeting. She's been a tireless advocate for women's rights on the international stage for many years and has been part of the United Kingdom's delegation to the Commission on the Status of Women many times. So is a regular here in New York. And I know that Baroness Hodgson, you were at the launch event in New York for this group back in autumn, and you are an honorary member of our group of friends. So it's very good to have you here, even if it is virtually. And I'm going to pass the floor to you now to reflect on what you've heard and offer us some remarks.
Thank you so much, Jonathan, for your kind introduction. Distinguished members of the panel, Your Excellencies, members of the Security Council, ladies and gentlemen, it is such a pleasure to have been asked to be part of this meeting this afternoon, co-hosted by Afghanistan, Germany, Indonesia, and the UK. We've listened to some excellent speeches. It's always an honor to hear from the First Lady, and our panelists have made some outstanding and inspiring contributions. As well, we've had some very thought-provoking interventions from Security Council members and other participants. We meet at a critical time. Since the US Taliban agreement on the 29th of February, many Afghans and friends of Afghanistan have hoped that we might be nearer to genuine negotiations and nearer to peace in Afghanistan than ever before. But with that hope and anticipation comes a nervousness about what that may mean for the women and girls of Afghanistan. Whilst there is a recognition that the future of Afghanistan must include everyone, including the Taliban, memories of what life was like under their rule prior to 2001 remain. The ongoing violence in the country serves as a reminder and does not instill confidence. And it is incumbent on the Taliban of 2020 to prove to all Afghans, especially Afghan women and girls, that they deserve to have a stake in Afghanistan's future. I first met a group of women from Afghanistan in 2006 in Washington, and I was struck then by the enormous courage of the women of Afghanistan. And again today, I'm reminded of their bravery. I visited the country now many times and met Afghan women from all walks of life. All the Afghan women we have heard from today have had the courage to put their heads above the parapet and to take part in public life in spite of all the threats. The attack in May, as we've heard from others, on the Médecins Sans Frontières run maternity ward in Kabul, which killed 24 women, children and babies, is the most extreme and barbaric example of targeting women and their rights. And it reminds us of the risks that so many women face there. Yet, despite continued challenges, Afghan women have taken great strides in terms of asserting their rights and helping build their country. As Her Excellency the Minister, Hasina Safi, said, Afghan women can lead their issues themselves. There are more girls at school, more women in college, more women in positions of leadership in politics, in business, the military, and in public life. Also demonstrated by the recent initiative of Afghan women deputy governors. We have with us today some outstanding examples of Afghan women. Her Excellency Adila Raz, Dr. Sarabi, Her Excellency Ms. Hasina Safi, and Ms. Ghazal Harris, and of course, Her Excellency, the First Lady. We cannot let all the gains that have been made for Afghan women be pushed back. We need to build on what has been achieved so far. Ms. Ghazal Harris reminded us of the inclusivity and equality enshrined in the Afghan constitution. Now is the moment for all of us, friends and supporters of Afghanistan and her people, to be listening to the voices of Afghan women themselves, what type of futures and society they want to build for their country. And this must mean all Afghan women, not only the excellent panel of Afghan women leaders, but we must not forget that there are Afghan women leaders of every age, from every walk of life and socio-economic background in Kabul and every province of the country. Rural women are among the most vulnerable. An inclusive peace process means women being involved at every stage and at every level. And as the SRSG Deborah Lance reminded us, a peace process must represent the whole Afghan population. Only that way will it be possible to build a peace that is long-lasting and sustainable and preserves the many achievements Afghanistan has made over the years. As the SRSG told us, how a society treats women is a prediction of its stability. Women must be at front and center. And so it was so heartening to hear from Her Excellency Alaya Ahmed bin Saif Al Thani, Permanent Representative of Qatar, on her country's commitment to trying to help to bring peace and ensure the rights of women are protected in the peace process. This is not an easy time in Afghanistan. After 40 years of war, and with the global pandemic wreaking havoc in Afghanistan as it has in many other countries. And as Dr. Sarabi stated, Afghan women have been the main victims of the last 4 decades. However, as the First Lady said, the Afghan women have found their voice. And I hope that through events like this one today, we can offer support to Afghanistan to help ensure that a long-term sustainable peace is achieved for all, and that all Afghans are able to build the future that they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Baroness Hodgson. Views I think we all subscribe to in this group of friends. Colleagues, we've reached our final concluding remarks. I note that we are 20 minutes or so behind schedule. So it's going to be Germany, Indonesia, the UK, and then Afghanistan. So I invite Christoph and then Gianni if they have anything they wish to add to what's been said so far.
No, just from Germany's side, just a big thank you for everybody for participating in what I feel was a very powerful event. It was part of our presidency agenda where we put women issues on the top of the agenda, for instance, sexual violence in conflict, but also women most effective in COVID, for the COVID-19 pandemia. And this today adds up. I found it really overwhelming, the impact of the women briefers today. And this instills optimism for the time ahead of us. With regard to Afghanistan, we hope that the inner Afghanistan negotiations will start soon and will start with women having a priority role and impact on these negotiations on both sides, also on the Taliban side. And Germany will stand ready, as in the past, also in the future, to facilitate. So thank you very much all for attending. It's really, as I said, very encouraging, the discussions that we all followed today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Just a short point from my part. I think a lot has been said with one underlining message, that is the achievement of the past year with regard to human rights, particularly women's rights, should be preserved. Challenges are still there, but everything must be done to safeguard and elevate women's rights. Further, their perspective and contribution are essential to the peace process and nation building for their viability. Every one of us must continue to support the women's active role. And there is no doubt that if it is those courageous and enterprising Afghan women who, as we speak, are making a concrete difference, whether in farms, cottage industries, schools and universities, politics, government and business organizations. I do believe that they hold an extraordinary potential in putting Afghanistan firmly on its path to peace, stability, and prosperity. On our part, we will continue to support efforts. As you know, my minister has also brought several Afghan women from the government as well as the Taliban for discussion in many instances, including in Indonesia. So we wish all the best and continue to fight for the interests of women in Afghanistan. I think I leave it at that. Thanks so much, Jonathan, and thanks to everyone for attending this Arria meeting.
Thank you very much, Gianni. From the UK's perspective, I don't want to give another long intervention. I'm going to simply thank everybody for coming today, for your participation in what I think has been a really interesting meeting. I particularly want to thank our guests from Kabul, who were so informative, so passionate with their words. It's been a real feature of this council's interaction with the Afghan people and government, this element of talking to so many impressive, influential, energetic, effective women. It's a great part of the council's engagement. So I want to really thank you for all that you are doing. I reiterate the very clear UK view that it is only through full inclusion in the peace process at every level, in every place, that we will make this peace process work, and that will make it work for all Afghans. So I leave you with that thought, and I pass over for the final word to my good colleague Adela. Over to you, Adela.
Thank you, Jonathan. I don't know what to say, but just to express my very, very sincere gratitude. First of all, the co-organizers, Germany, as the chair and the president for the month of this month of the Security Council, for letting us to have the Arria-Formula, for UK being the co-chair of the Group of Friends and a wonderful partner with Afghanistan in our efforts here at the Security Council and as well at the UN. And Indonesia, as I said, my dear big brother, Ambassador Johnny, and also the co-pen holder for Afghanistan's file at the Security Council. I also have to express my gratitude to the members of the Security Council for your participation, for your constant support to us in every step of the Afghanistan, the nation that it is today, that we built in last 19 years. Afghanistan had been one of the most important conversations at the Security Council, and you have always stood with us and you have heard us, and I'm very grateful for being with us today and hearing the wonderful voices you heard from Afghanistan. And now you know where I get my inspiration and my motivation. I also have to express my gratitude to Uzbekistan, a wonderful neighbor and a regional partner, as well as Norway for being the friend that always stands with us in the rainy and the difficult days. My gratitude to Deborah for being a friend of Afghanistan beyond an SRSG and with your new role, and it's inspiring to see woman leadership at the UN in Afghanistan at this very important time. And thanks to the UN partnership with us during these difficult days and critical time that we have in front of us. And of course, Alia, to you, I know you're back at home and taking time to participate and express the support of your government, which is very critical because this is what we have in front of us at the beginning of the intra-Afghan negotiations, and the stronger echo that we have to have from the Muslim community, and you reflect on that. And of course, Ms. Barnes Fiona Hudson, you're a great friend. We said this at the beginning, and your presence here today even once more signifies that this friendship is long-term. You were with us at the launch of the Group of Friends, and your constant voice for a woman of Afghanistan and being the friend to us is extremely beneficial, and we're very grateful. And thank you for being here and for your wonderful and strong and supportive words. And of course, the member of the Group of Friends. The launch of the Group of Friends was an important initiative that UK and Afghanistan and with the members put together, because as it was said earlier,
Afghanistan is at the critical juncture. And as I always say, this is truly the time that it is a testimony if we are able to make it through the bumpy road that we have in front of us, especially in terms of the protection of women's rights. And when I say protection of women's rights, that's the protection of women's constitutional rights during the peace process and after the peace process with the agreement that will be made. And of course, to our viewers, we had more than 100 viewers today because our event was live broadcasted. And I should mention one person that she gave us the motivation, and she's a secret weapon that Afghan women know we have at the government, at the structure of the institution that is built towards women empowerment with the genuine commitment that His Excellency, the President has. And he has said it publicly out loud as well, that he's truly inspired by Her Excellency, the First Lady. And she is truly an inspiration for many of us. And you heard her today, and you know exactly when I say, I get my inspiration from women in Afghanistan, and that's what I mean. And thank you, Your Excellency, for your time, from your unwavering support to us and to women in the rural area, in the cities, and really making sure that women in the government have been heard and they are given the space to exercise their leadership role. And just one concluding point that I will end today's event is that we are, as everybody says, at the critical time, and it's a strong voice for Taliban. Number one, that they hear us, women of Afghanistan, and our international partners. We are committed, and we're very genuine for peace. And as Her Excellency, the First Lady said, it is the woman of Afghanistan that pays the highest price. So we truly want the end of conflict. But what exactly that end will mean to us, and what it would be post-peace, it's a society that protects our constitutional right. And they must acknowledge that today Afghanistan is a new Afghanistan. And as Deborah said, it's an Afghanistan that's committed to the international community with the international commitments we have here at the UN, based on equality, human rights, the rights of women, the rights of minorities, and the rights of girls. And that is truly protected by the constitution we have under the leadership of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan. Thank you all. Thank you so much. And I'm asked to say that this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.